Hi everybody, it's Jordan here. Welcome back to the second episode in this mini-series about how to use R, learning R from scratch, from setting up the RStudio through to reading in data, graphing data, looking at summary statistics such as means and standard deviations and things like this, then doing more complex statistics, okay, then reporting it all, and I can also show you other things in this series if there's time, such as writing the report in R, as well as making maps and things like this. So I hope you enjoyed my last video, and I hope you enjoy this one as well. Like I said, we've started from the very beginning, so in the last episode we installed R and RStudio onto our computers. So I'm just gonna make this video a bit smaller here. When we install RStudio for the very first time, okay, it looks like this. It's got this kind of white background. And what I'm going to do first is remind you of the different panels. I mentioned that a little bit at the end of the last video, but I'll do it in a little bit more detail here. Okay. There's something interesting going on, which is that one of the important panels, crucial panel in RStudio, is actually hidden by default. So this little button here, minimize button, if you push that, the script, the source panel will appear. Like I said, we're going to do all of our coding and all of our notes in this source panel, okay? That allows us to then save this file. Whatever we write can be saved as a file, an R file, onto our computers, okay? This is currently where the console is, and good code is then run into this, okay? I'll show you how that works in a second. These ones on the right are extra stuff. You probably don't need a lot of this stuff here. Tutorial might be helpful and help menu might be useful for beginners. What you definitely do need are the plots tab, the packages tab, and the viewer tab. Okay. The environment and files will show. Firstly, the environment will show data sets that you've brought from your computer into R. And the Files tab at the bottom here will show other files on your computer, okay, in the folder that's currently set as the working directory. So what do we mean by working directory? Okay, so the working directory is a place on your computer where you want to save the R files into, and it's also where you're going to have the data files, the CSV files, the text files that contain the data that you want to bring into R, okay? So you want to bring data into R in the format mostly text files or CSV files. These are two different file types. And having done that, you can then begin to work on the data in R. So I'm going to go through the menus now, and in that process, we'll set up our working directory to the place that, well, for me, it's going to be on my desktop probably. Let's see. So I'm scrolling through my folders here. I've just clicked browse in this, right? So just as a reminder, I've gone into tools menu, global options. We'll do a few things in these global options, but we'll start with the working directory. So we browse here for the folder on our computer that's going to contain stuff, the files that we're going to bring into R, okay? And I've created a folder on my desktop called YouTube. So I'm gonna go double click on this one, actually enter it, and then click open. That then says default working directory when not in a project. Yes, we are in the right folder now, so that's great. Don't just push OK, click apply first so it saves it, and then click OK, okay? And occasionally that can not always work, okay, for some strange reason. So we also want to do it in this menu here, which is the session menu. Session set working directory, choose directory. Okay. Now, for some reason, it didn't take me to the folder that I want to be the working directory. So I'll just do that again here, exactly the same process. Desktop, YouTube, enter it, click open. Okay. Now, what you're seeing in the Files tab are the other files that are in that folder. And I know that these other files, experiment.r and geordicoding.png, are inside that folder. So I know I'm in the right place. Now, why would we do this? Well, I've mentioned for one thing, it's the easiest way to bring in data. It's also the place where we can organize anything relating to a single project, including our scripts that we will produce in each session. You also might see code online with people reading in files from their computer using like file_path, where they create a really long URL, or what, not URL, the location on of the file on their computer, and they call it that way. It's the same information you'll get from the properties if you were to right click on a file or a folder on your desktop, but that is not helpful, because if you were to send that script to somebody else, that link will not work for them. So it's very useful and easier for each individual using R to have their own working directory. I've actually got multiple working directories for different students, and then that helps me to stay organized. I wouldn't want to have all my files in the same folder because I do very different things with different students. So I basically have a separate folder for each student and then enter that folder each time I teach a different person. So now that the working directory is sorted, note that you can also type into a script get wd, and this is important because you notice when I started typing letters here, we're typing in code for the first time now, get w, it starts suggesting what you actually want to code. It starts suggesting code for you, and I use that a lot. If you type get wd, it does this. So this is the first time typing code, and it's the first time introducing you to brackets, which are a fundamental part of code lines in R. But we're not quite ready to do much coding yet. I just want to show you that when you run this line, so I clicked anywhere in the line, some people highlight everything, but you can just click this once with your left mouse, then click run, and in the console we now see the actual location of the working directory on our computer. This is the same place as is shown in the files. That's why I don't really show the files tab too much, because there's other ways to find out information about your working directory, such as doing this. So now, if we go into the global options, you will remember that at the start of the last episodes, I showed you briefly what my RStudio looked like prior to uninstalling it and starting again from scratch. It was blue. The panels were in different places. I think the text looked a little bit different too. So all of that is customizable, and it's customizable through these options here in the Tools Global Options. Okay, let's go through each different menu then, and I'll recommend some things to do to make your experience in RStudio a little bit easier. First thing is, yes, some of these options are ticked by default, and some of them are useful to be ticked by default, some of them are not. Restore most recently opened project at startup, and restore previously opened source documents. That's whatever we're showing here up in the top left at startup. That's useful to keep on because these are R scripts that you might want to continue working on tomorrow, but you might want to close RStudio in the meantime. It's just useful to be able to quickly get access to them again. Note that if you close RStudio, you might need to set your working directory again. and most people just do that through the session menu. You can be prepared to check your working directory and change your working directory through the session menu every time you come into RStudio. But these will always stay in this area in the top left if we've got these buttons ticked here. Some people use projects in RStudio. I don't really do that too often. For what I need RStudio for, mostly for teaching, I kind of just work with individual scripts within this single project. I don't change projects. When it comes to this workspace tick here, okay, I usually untick this one and put never. That option says restore our data into workspace at startup. The reason why I don't allow that is because this refers to files, okay, that you might bring in to our data files, and it's likely, well, pretty likely, that you might edit, for example, a text file, a CSV file, and want to bring it in again. And you might give it the same name, name the data frame in R the same name. So you want to bring in data clean. You don't want R to remember, for example, previous data sets after you've closed RStudio. Okay. Always save history, you can untick this one. When we get to these bottom options, there's a ticked option for notify me of updates to RStudio. This is what I mentioned last time, where I said the RStudio undergoes some updates. I don't know how many a year, maybe a couple of times a year. Base R also goes through about one update per year, and you will get a notification about the new updates, at least for RStudio, by having this option ticked. So I'll leave that ticked. You can also check for updates in RStudio through the help menu. Okay, that's us now finished in here in the general, so I'm going to click apply. Then I'm going to go to codes. Okay, there's only a couple of things that are not ticked by default that I usually tick. First one is soft wrap the source files. Okay. Now, the way this is currently set up in its default form means that if you write a really long line of code, it will just continue off the page, and there'll be a scroll bar allowing you to move left and right to scroll through the code. That's the same if you were to write a hashtag note. Okay, we're going to talk much more about leaving notes to yourself and the kind of notes you can leave in a script as well. I don't really like that scroll bar thing. By clicking soft wrap the source files, that actually means that all the text is going to fit onto the screen at one time. And then when it gets to the edge of the pane, it's just going to continue onto the next line, the next line number, instead of continuing off the page, off the panel. I'll kind of show you how that looks like. Okay, so for now, I'm going to leave a hashtag note. I'll just write a bunch of letters, eh? Okay, so our scroll bar has now appeared, and we would have to scroll left and right to get to the end of that. That can be messy and annoying. You don't really want to have to scroll through long text strings to find out if there's a mistake somewhere. It's much easier, it would be a lot easier, for example, for it to be spread out onto different lines. And that's what the soft wrap the source files does for you. Hopefully we'll see that here. Yeah. So that has now gone on to a new line, and it's soft wrapped the source files. So that's a very useful thing. Display, yes. Use rainbow parentheses. Okay. R really depends on the use of round brackets. Okay, parentheses. It's used in pretty much all libraries. For example, as just a basic example, when we want to view a file or view a data frame, okay, so view a data frame that's either in R already or that we bring in, we're going to do view capital V, brackets, the name of the data frame. And there's already data frames in R that I can show you in a second. And these data frames have specific names such as iris and empty cars. And we just put the name of that data frame in the brackets. However, we always want to make sure there's the same number of opening brackets and closing brackets in each line of code, okay, in each separate row. And so by using rainbow parenthesis, it always makes the first bracket and the last bracket the same color, okay, or basically the first of what should be the first bracket and the last, what should be the last bracket, the same color. Using the color scheme that I like, which is cobalt, the color of the first and the last bracket should be pink. So then I know that I've always had the same number of opening and closing brackets because the color is the same. That's really useful. Right now, the brackets are always going to be the same color, okay? So, for example, just if I was to add some brackets in here, they're only going to be ever one color. So for example, okay, like this, they're all green in this default color scheme, and that's not particularly helpful for ensuring that you have the same number of opening and closing. Okay. Of course, we don't need this number of brackets for this simple line of code, the getWD, but we might have code later where we do need at least 3 opening, 3 closing brackets. Next thing, apply this. You notice here it's pink in this color scheme as well now. And if I then add some more brackets in here, yeah, you see the color begins to change, and we have a nice color rainbow spectrum going on here. Okay. Don't need to do anything in the console, at least that's not something I do very often. Appearance, yes, I changed this, okay? So you have an option to change from modern to sky as the theme. Note that that doesn't change too much about how the RStudio looks, but the editor font definitely will. Okay, so now my RStudio text is set to courier, and let's look at the editor theme now. So like I said, I like darker colors, and my favorite one is either cobalt or solarized dark, okay? You'll notice if you go through these that the color of hashtags, which are the notes, as well as text, as well as specific parts of the code, for example, numbers and NAs and parts of functions, all of these are going to be assigned specific colors, okay? When we use cobalt, we apply this, the screen looks like this, and now I'm getting it back to the way it was before. This is the color scheme that I like, but feel free to choose a color scheme that makes our experience more enjoyable for you. Tools, global options. Okay, we're kind of getting towards the end of changing settings. I'm gonna suggest that you leave your source, so we're in the pane layout option within the global options. I would suggest you leave your source box where it is, which is in the top left. Again, that's where your scripts are going to be. It's also going to be where data shows if you use a view function. I don't like my console being down here because my mind kind of reads across the page. So when I click the run button on a code line, like I did for the getWD earlier, I'd like to see that run into the console next to it, you know, on the right. So when you want to change the location of the panes, the format of the orientation of the panes, you just go to these drop down menus and you turn this to console. If we apply that right now, you'll see that the console has now moved from here to here. and that actually makes things easier, at least for my eyes. Tools global options, you'll become very familiar with the tools global options after having done this many times. Pane layout, right, that means then that the bottom two panels are pretty much, they give pretty much the same options. And these are things that some of which we need, like as I said, the plots tab, we need that to be in at least one of them. The packages tab and the viewer tab. What I do is just make the bottom left pane contain nothing. Okay, I don't really need these options to be split across two panels. I set the options that I do need in the bottom right one only, and I maximize the area of the source pane. Right, for the reason I gave earlier, I'm going to hide the files tab. We could get information about the working directory from the getWD line. Packages is crucial, so I'm going to talk about that in a second. And you might need some or want some of these tabs, and if you need them or want them, drop me a message and let me know if you use them. Could be that a colleague is suggesting you use build or connections, and that's up to you. Okay, but for the purpose of general data analysis, what we really need is the plots, packages, help if you want, and viewer at the minimum. Okay, apply this, and then okay. So as you can see, the bottom left panel has now been minimized, and this is giving our source panel more space so that we can code even more lines, which is fantastic. We will definitely go through these tabs in future sessions, because when we make plots, they're going to appear here, and these plots are going to be a key part of this course. R works on packages. Okay, so there's a tab here called packages, and these are all the packages that are currently on my computer, which is kind of surprising. I actually have so many because we just started again. Oh no, of course we started again by uninstalling RStudio and reinstalling, but it keeps the libraries. It might, at least for me anyway, keep the libraries that we had already on our computer before we uninstalled, which is great. Okay. However, there might be some other packages that you don't have, and these packages allow you to do specific things, like make graphs, make specific types of models, make maps. If you're aware that you need a library that you don't have, then you go into install. The default repository is CRAN. You can also install a package from a location on your computer using this package archive file, in which case the folder will be a zip folder or a GZ folder mostly. Okay. However, we want to get it off the internet, so this is where we get it from. Okay, and then we just type in a folder. Library that we're going to need. And the most important library that you'll definitely need to work with is tidyverse. The reason why is because tidyverse is like a mother library that contains things like ggplot2, lubridate, dplyr. Okay, ggplot2 is the main graphing library, and dplyr is the main cleaning library. It used to be that people used to load these libraries separately, but now these main libraries are all part of tidyverse. So they load when you load in tidyverse. Okay, tidyverse was installed on my computer, but it's definitely installed now. Then to actually load the library, we have two options. Okay, you can find its location in this list. We're going down to T. Okay, and you can turn it on. It might not go on by default, so you want to turn it on. You can turn it on here in this box, or you can use another line of codes, which is library brackets tidy, and then it starts suggesting what library you want to call on, you want to load. We're going to go to tidyverse. Okay. Okay, so then we can click anywhere in that line and click run, the run button here. It shows in the console that all of these libraries have now been loaded when we loaded Tidyverse, which is fantastic. Okay. So the next thing is updating libraries. Some of these libraries undergo changes from time to time. In fact, most of them probably will be updated by the developers at some point. So we can always click update to find out what libraries need updated, and then click install updates. You can click yes here. And that will just keep our libraries up to date. And that's important because it's possible that old codes might not work in updates of libraries, and it's possible that updates to libraries contain more stuff, better stuff, than they contained it before. Okay. The next thing then is viewing data which is currently in R. So we're going to use a third line of code here, which is view with capital V. There's several data frames that are currently in R, which means that we don't even need to bring in data from outside. We will do that next time, okay? View iris. When we view iris, this data set comes up next to your script, and this contains information on flowers, okay? 3 species of flowers called Iris setosa, Iris versicolor, Iris virginica. It's not a huge data set, okay? This one's only got 150 rows. You can get information, good, useful information about the data set just from this. 150 entries, that's 150 rows, 5 columns. And if we scroll up and down using the scroll bar, we can see 3 species are appearing here. This is a data set that a lot of biologists work with. And basically, the main idea of this is that the 3 species of plants that are named in this column have different sized flowers and sepals. Small data frame, but there's a data frame which is part of Tidyverse called diamonds, okay, which I commonly work with as well, just because it's huge and it allows us to do a lot of things, okay. This data frame contains 54,000 rows and 10 columns. Both of these data frames have different kinds of data in them. Okay, so they both contain numbers. The iris contain numbers for the measurements of the flowers and the sepals. This contains numbers for the price of diamonds. Okay, but this one also contains groups such as the cut, ideal, premium, good, and iris had groups in terms of species. So that allows us to make different kinds of graphs and do different kinds of analysis. I will next time show you how to read in your own data from your computer into R, and we will also do some summary statistics on these 2 data frames. I hope you enjoyed that and that was helpful. The last thing I want to say is any codes that I write during these classes or YouTube videos I will put here, okay, and I'll leave the link below the video. This is my Figshare account, and even although it's called Figshare, you can put lots of types of things in there, files, not just figures, and I can put an R script in there. So the R codes and hashtags will all be in here. You can just download them, and as long as you have RStudio loaded, double click on the downloads and it will go straight into your R. But I recommend putting it into your working directory to keep everything nice and organized. Alright guys, have a good day, bye.